Hi, I'm Andrew Cain, State Politics Editor at the Richmond Times-Dispatch, and with me are my colleagues, politics reporters Dave Ress and Charlotte Rene Woods. And we're here to talk about the aftermath. You know, the governor has finished his work on more than 1,000 bills that passed in the General Assembly session. And the governor's actions included a record-smashing 153 vetoes. So we're going to talk about some of the governor's actions that were expected, some that surprised us, and where we are now going forward. So Dave and Charlotte, some of the vetoes that the governor produced on some of the marquee issues were not a surprise early on. What were some of these?
A lot of gun bills, to be frank. There were some surprises and things he signed, but you know, with that being such a Democratic priority, it's not totally partisan, but it typically leans that way. I suspected, especially like the assault weapon ban, I knew a lot of those would clear through both chambers, end up to his desk, and face some vetoes, but there were some signatures.
And minimum wage was obviously a veto that was coming. He had also, for some smaller bills, farm worker exemption and most recently a proposal for a study to look at minimum wage for tipped workers. He vetoed those as well. No surprise. Probably more of the surprises came on sort of what he went along with. One, for instance, the marriage equality language.
Yeah, that was a bill from Delegate Rosiah Henson, a freshman from Prince William County, and that codified marriage equality, which was sort of a real surprise, right?
The other one that sort of surprised me was the gun-related one. It's a really sad story about a Henrico, I think, middle school student who was shot by a very disturbed fellow student who was able to get hold of his parents' guns, or gun, and that was one where Youngkin went along with it. What he was saying was that he's a big Second Amendment guy, kind of has to be if he's a Republican, but he's also a big parental responsibility guy, which is a theme that he's picked up on a lot of education policy stuff, sometimes to the distress of people in the education community.
Yeah, and viewers might remember that terrible case. That was the case of Lucia Bremer, the middle school kid who was walking with a friend. Terrible, terrible story.
And also just like the fact that so many people who have lived experiences that connect to some of these bills showed up to publicly testify during legislative session. Like the committee meetings are sometimes very emotional because people are showing up to testify, and I think it just reminds everybody doing this work that there are real people attached to all of these bills, right. And that one clearly resonated.
Charlotte, there was another sort of surprising action by the governor regarding a bill from Senator Favola.
Yeah, you know, last year there was, it's a bill basically that stops menstrual health data, like if you store it on an app on your phone, from being subject to a search warrant. And the concern for people is with this patchwork quilt of abortion and menstrual health laws around the country, that data could be used to determine, when someone was pregnant or not. And, also even just tracking data if you're, maybe did you visit a clinic? Did you get an abortion? And so that one, Youngkin's administration spoke against it in a committee last year. It caught national attention. Stephen Colbert, had a joke about it on the Late Show. The White House put out a statement lambasting the Youngkin administration over it. And then now this year, he's actually signed the bill. Although, and Senator Favola, she was telling me, I'm happy, I'm pleased, but I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. Delegate Marcus Simon, who had, an extradition bill similar to Favola's extradition bill, which would prevent someone from being, if you come from out of state, a state that has a deep restriction or a ban, you get an abortion in Virginia. That bill, if it had become law, would have prevented Virginia from complying with another state saying, send us this person, we want to criminalize them for this.
And the governor vetoed that.
But when he vetoed Simon's bill, it included some Consumer Protection Act language that would, stop companies from voluntarily offering up, like an app offering up the information, the menstrual data that the Favola bill that he signed. So it's a little bit like a whack-a-mole, but that's why, Simon was saying I don't want to give him, quote, too much credit, but in the meantime, Favola is saying, she's still grateful that this happened. And the Youngkin administration did say he appreciated, quote, I appreciate, Favola's work on this bill.
So now we move forward and we have the big action yet to come, which is trying to somehow reconcile the state budget. And Dave, the governor was busy on that regard as well.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, and kind of what's been interesting about how he's played the veto game so far. In announcing his package of budget amendments, this is really unusual, by the way. Governors don't usually do this. He's trying to sound very conciliatory. It's common ground. It's little tweaks, big give on my part with taxes, and a lot of spending priorities that I had asked for. The problem is if you veto 153 bills and you veto things that really matter to Democrats, minimum wage, the gun violence bills, the cannabis bill, it's kind of hard to see, and the initial reaction is very much sort of, yeah, right, conciliation is nice, but we're the ones in charge. So we'll see what happens on that one. That's probably going to make for a very long April 17th.
Yeah, and of course this also comes in the context of the governor losing his dream of the arena in Alexandria. So neither side got the marquee things that they were seeking. So we'll see if they can assuage the hard feelings and get something done to avoid a government shutdown. So stay tuned. I want to thank politics reporters Dave Ress and Charlotte Rene Woods for joining me, and we encourage all of you to continue to follow our coverage on richmond.com and in the Richmond Times-Dispatch.